yet again, showed a very strong slump. Now, if we look at the blue line, which shows the Chinese investment in Europe, we see something which is very, very important. We remember what we've seen before is Chinese overseas investment. And we have seen during the period of the financial crisis that Chinese overseas investment in Europe during the financial crisis, they went down a little bit. It's not been that bad and it's not been that serious, but it's just a little bit. We see that overseas investment, so overall overseas direct investment in China, really had a slump. So it just went down very considerably. Even though Chinese investment overseas in other countries in all over the world went down slightly, it's not been that serious. Now comparing this again to the figures for Europe shows that even though the financial crisis had a huge impact on the European Union investment in China, it's not been the same case with Chinese investments on the European market. On contrary, as we see from this figure here, direct investments of Chinese enterprises in Europe even increased. Now why? Now this is very interesting. Actually, the financial crisis, the period of the financial crisis has been an extremely good platform for Chinese direct investment in Europe. You see? Europe has a very stable environment. Europe provides very good conditions. Europe has a very, very good consumer base. And Chinese enterprises, many Chinese enterprises, which engaged in exploring overseas markets with not so much focused in the past on the European markets, because traditionally they would go like to the United States and other markets, suddenly figured out that during the financial crisis, it might be a very good time to get into the market. So the financial crisis in Europe actually presented a very good example and a very good chance for Chinese companies to step in. So how to step in? With Europe being hit very hardly by the financial crisis, suddenly you had a lot of very good companies, a lot of good technology, a very good market base, very good brands just sitting there. You had a lot of property sitting there. Like look at the tourism industry. European financial crisis hit Europe very hard. Suddenly tourists stay away. And if you have to survive with tourists staying off, that was very hard for many tourism enterprises like hotels. But this again, the brand was there, the quality was there, the know-how was there, everything was there. And suddenly it was time of sell-off. So you had companies, well-established small and medium-sized enterprises in Europe that have been there for a very long time, suddenly having suffered very, very heavily by the financial crisis and being hit very hard. And they were off for sale. But nobody had money. Nobody. So, I mean, you had a hotel, you had a company, your business is broken because you are hit by financial crisis, and now what do you want to do? You have to lay off people. You do have a very good company, but you want to sell it off. But nobody has money. Nobody in Europe got money. Nobody in America got money. On the other side, as we have mentioned before, you had China and you had Chinese companies that had a lot of liquidity and didn't know what to do with that liquidity. And it was very difficult to get out, to find somewhere and somehow to hook up with. So you had those Chinese companies having a lot of liquidity, being cash rich, suddenly looking at Europe and seeing their chance. Buy up companies, buy up property, invest the cash in getting into the market. And this is the interesting thing. So I would say the financial crisis presented a very good chance for Chinese companies to make their first or their more serious approach to the European market. So what does it mean? When we now take the investment development trends and we look at the net investment figure and we look at development phases, so how do companies get into the foreign markets? It's usually a phase-by-phase approach. You have to start somewhere, and if you look at investment trends or investment strategies, if you also look at investment strategies of Chinese companies with regards to foreign markets, it's more or less split into 3 phases, 3 or 4 phases. Looking at net investment. Now, we have the traditional net investment development path, which would be the dark blue color, would be that in phase 1, where you do the first analysis, you try to figure out how does the market work, what is the environment, where can I start? So where you have to move very cautiously. So in the first development phase, you see that net investment would not be that high because you've got to figure out the market. You try to keep the investment low and make secure steps into the market. Just understanding the market, getting some know-how, trying to find the right partners. Now the traditional net investment development path going into the next phases, phase 2 is the lowest part because then you have really try to figure it out, yes or no. Will it work or will it not work? And only then if you get further, you figure out, hey, the market would be good. I would have a good environment. My products would be accepted. I would find new possibilities for product development. I could expand my market. I would have access to know-how, etc., etc. Only then you start really going up, moving up the ladder. So it's very fast. And then it's, you're going up, you have your first investment, then it's saturated, you have to, it's a stable market, you are selling good, you don't need to invest that much, and then of course you have to get into new products, you have to invest more and more, and then you have to start investment again. Now, if we look at the development path of net investment in the context of globalization, then it looks a little bit different. So this light blue color would represent the development path of net investment when it comes to globalization in comparison to the traditional net investment development path. So from the start, it's about the same. You know, it starts off, here there's not much different. It follows about the same logic. But internationalization requires a different strategy than just getting in traditional forms of investment. The challenges are different, the time takes longer, and also the fund allocation you require for investment are very much different. And as we can see from this picture here, the curves would be much smoother. So you don't have that high levels of rapid investment because you don't feel that much safe on the foreign market. If you are comfortable and if you are used to a certain market requirement and to a certain market condition and to a certain customer base and the same traditional environment, you feel comfortable enough and safe enough that you can engage in high-level investment. Because by that time, you know about the market. And by that time, you know where you are. It's your environment. So you feel comfortable of engaging in high-level investment to get further.